One of the things that's been very important to you over the last 5 years has been to be seen and to be following an independent course, not the traditional music industry course, not the way most other bands have gone. How have you done that? How you...
Blind faith and ignorance. That's probably it.
I think,
It's very hard to put into a few sentences, but we've always, from the very beginning, we've always wanted to do everything our own way. It's just been a natural thing, from the music itself, from the way we write songs, the way we play our instruments, the approach to lyrics. We decided early on to just tear up the rule book and, you know, just work it out for ourselves and figure out our place in the scheme of things. And we realized, I suppose, that we had something different. It wasn't something that was very obvious, you know, our own talents, what we have to offer as a band, and we just felt that if we tried to be like anyone else, it would just get lost. So we just thought, for better or for worse, this is it.
If you go back to clippings from 82, 81, it says U2 is going to be the biggest star of the 80s. They're going to be the superstars. They're going to be the super... Every year it's gotten a little more, and then bam, 1987 comes along, you have all your magazine covers, you're selling out everywhere, you're selling millions of albums. Did you guys sit around and say, is this really going to happen? You know, did you have faith all along that it would?
we just bought Rolling Stone and started printing it ourselves.
I mean, that puts an enormous amount of pressure
Well,
on you.
really, for us, although that sort of attention and that sort of success is great, it's never been our primary goal. I mean, for us, we still haven't achieved the ultimate goal, which is the best music we can make. The record that we feel sums up everything that we want to do in 40 minutes of music. So that's still to be achieved. I mean, it's great that we're now no longer a cult group, that we've achieved a place in the sort of the mainstream, because we've always thought that our music deserved a place there.
We probably still are a cult group. We're just a really big cult. And maybe that's the way we should keep it. But Edge is really right, because if our goal was to have a #1 record in the United States, you know, platinum albums and all, #1 singles, well, we would be very sad men then, wouldn't we? Because we'd have achieved our goals and we'd have nothing else to do. But our goals are musical ones, almost unachievable. And so we're still, if you like, chasing after that sort of thing in the distance that we don't really quite understand.
And that's some kind of more of a musical expression.
Yeah.
It's a musical goal. We feel like as a band we're just beginning. We felt like that for a few years. Every time we release an album, as soon as it's finished, we just forget about it. We're thinking about the next one. We're always dissatisfied. I tried to stop this record being released. You know, I rang up McGuinness, our manager. I said, "Look, it's been a big mistake. You've got to stop this." And I'd just gone to the press, to the plant we're printing up there. Big mistake. We're really unhappy about it as a band. And he said, I can't do anything about it. And I said, well, I think it'll only sell about 3 copies, but if that's okay. And he said, yeah, sure.
See if they listen to you again.
Yeah.
Now, this record, Joshua Tree, is a lot about your American impressions. You said you have a great love of America. Why did you focus on America for this record, or what was the issue that was up for you?
Well, as an Irishman, I feel very close to America. We feel very close to America as an Irish band, because so many Irish immigrants have, over 100 years, even since the Great Famine in the middle of the 19th century, they left, they took boats, trains, and later planes to America, you know, the promised land for a lot of Irish people. And of course, we love America, we love to be here. And yet, we struggle with it sometimes, because it's worth struggling over, it's worth arguing about, it's worth criticizing.
Yeah, that's
you know, and even though we feel really close to America, as Irish people, at the same time, we kind of react and pull back when we see, you know, for instance, what America's doing to a tiny little country like Nicaragua. Because as people coming from a tiny little country called Ireland, we feel very close to Nicaragua. We remember what it was like when we had the British Empire breathing down our necks. I mean, it's literally like a neighborhood bully of 6'4" bullying a 2-year-old child. That is, they're no threat to anybody. in my opinion. And I understand it's a more complicated issue than all that. I went to Nicaragua even just to see it for myself. I saw the supermarkets with no food in them because of the blockade that this country's put on. I got into taxis, and here the taxi drivers, they thought I was from America. They just called me gringo, But they didn't hold anything against me as an American. They love America in Nicaragua. They love Americans. They cannot figure out Ronald Reagan. But that's the deal,
That's really what the album is about, really, is
coming to grips with America.
coming to grips, because America's, from our point of view, is like the very best and the very worst rolled into one. And as Bono says, the reason that we criticize, I wouldn't say America, I would say Reagan, in a sense, comes in for some criticism, is because we believe in the place. And I don't think that Ronald Reagan represents America. When I think of America, I think of Bobby Kennedy or Martin Luther King. I think Reagan is like an aberration. He's just a fluke that's happening right now.
But he's got a good sense of humor.
You'd need a good sense of humor.
He's got a good sense of humor. So, what we're living in this age where television, can be the Pied Piper politically. That's what worries me. But he's only as popular, as somebody recently said, as an average movie star. That's not enough reason to vote for somebody. America should have and continue its generous spirit. It opened its doors to the Irish. It opened its doors to the Italians. A land built on the hopes and dreams of immigrants. This is the dream. I think it's good to dream, but it's becoming a nightmare as a continent of America is becoming an island, cutting itself off and sort of stamping on all opposition to it. And I don't believe that's the real America.
In '85, you guys said that the biggest threat to the band was financial success, and clearly you got it, so what'd you do with it?
We broke up the band. Sure. We just reformed it for the interview, Ron. This is it.
Did it put pressure on you? I mean, did you done
Well,
okay?
all I can say is that there's a lot more things
Your
to
hat
do in the
hasn't
day.
changed.
The hat hasn't changed, but I think actually more than the financial aspect of it, it's when you get to this level, it's like everything becomes so much more complicated. There's just so many more things to do now and attend to that if you're not very careful and very together about it, you just end up having less time for your music, and that's where things start to go wrong. But I think and I hope that we have seen that and maybe learnt from bands in the past who've kind of fallen for that one. So if we can continue to keep that in mind, maybe it won't affect us. But it is definitely a hassle.
One of your songs is dedicated to Martin Luther King. Another one talks about the solidarity in Poland. So there have been some songs that pointed out some real political situations. Is that a part and parcel of your everyday life, too? You keep
Yeah, it's
up on politics?
Part and parcel of your life, too. You turn on the television. You
It's
read the
there.
newspapers.
It's just we refuse to accept that there are certain things that you can't deal with in a rock and roll song. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, movies and rock and roll are the current most vital forms of expression, communication, and why must rock and roll be so empty and so one-dimensional? That's all. I mean, it's not that we feel like we have to deal exclusively with those kind of topics. Far from it. We deal with the full range of experience, etc. in our songs. So it's just that we happen to deal in a few things like that as well.
I don't know, I think it shows in a way that the media is lacking in terms of actually being able to put a coherent piece of information across a lot of the time. And I suppose our frustration with dealing with that means it comes out in the songs. And it's a symptom, I think, of this idea that anything that is on television is kind of fiction and not fact.